Discussion on the characters, themes and summary of Harold Pinter's The Caretaker with original textual quotations. Harold Pinter's The Caretaker, 1959, is a powerful exploration of human relationships, power dynamics, and existential uncertainty. Below is a detailed discussion of its characters and themes, supported by textual references. Characters. 1. Aston. Character traits. Aston is a quiet, introspective, and damaged individual. His past experiences, especially a mental breakdown and subsequent electroconvulsive therapy, have left him detached and socially awkward. Key quotations. They used to come around with long spikes on the end of poles, push them down, prod them about. This monologue highlights Ashton's trauma and his struggle to articulate his feelings. I'd like to build a shed out in the garden. This reflects his longing for stability and control over his life. Davies. Character traits. Davies is a homeless, opportunistic man who is self-centered, manipulative, and delusional. He dreams of escaping his circumstances but is unwilling to take responsibility for his actions. Key quotations. I've got my papers in Sidcup. This repeated line symbolizes Davies' false hopes and procrastination. I can take care of things. I've had experience. This demonstrates his overestimation of his abilities and his attempt to manipulate others. Mick. Character traits. Mick, Ashton's younger brother, is a sharp, unpredictable, and enigmatic character. He represents a dominant, almost sadistic figure who enjoys toying with Davies. Key quotations. You remind me of my uncle's brother. This line illustrates Mick's ambiguous and mocking attitude. What the hell are you doing in my room? This sudden aggression highlights his volatile nature. Themes. Power and control. The play revolves around shifting power dynamics between the three characters. Each tries to assert dominance in their own way. Mick controls through intimidation. You make too much noise. Isolation and communication breakdown. All three characters are isolated, unable to connect meaningfully with each other or society. Davies' alienation. No one's ever cared for me. Ashton's inability to communicate effectively. It took me a long time to get used to talking again. Mick's detachment and cryptic dialogue reflect his loneliness. Identity and displacement. Davies' constant reference to papers in Sidcup symbolizes his search for identity, yet his refusal to act shows his inability to define himself. This displacement mirrors the existential themes of Pinter's works. Materialism and ownership. Material possessions symbolize security and power. Davies' obsession with shoes and possessions. I need some shoes that fit me. Mick's fixation on renovating the room. I'd like to get this place fixed up. Existential uncertainty. The lack of clear motives, the ambiguous relationships, and the unresolved ending contribute to the theme of existential uncertainty, common in Pinter's comedies of menace. Summary. Harold Pinter's The Caretaker is a three-act play that explores themes of power dynamics, identity, and isolation. Below is a point-by-point discussion of the play's summary with textual references. Introduction to the characters and setting. The play opens with Aston bringing an older homeless man, Davies, to his cluttered room in a dilapidated house. The room symbolizes a space of refuge but also highlights neglect and chaos. Textual quote. Aston tells Davies, "You can stay here, if you like," establishing the initial act of kindness and setting up the tension between charity and control. Davies' arrival and complaints. Davies immediately begins to complain about his life and the state of the room. He reveals his mistrust of others and his grandiosity, despite his destitution. Textual quote. Davies says, "You got any shoes? I've been walking in these. They're no good." This reflects his dependency and dissatisfaction. Ashton's backstory. Aston reveals his traumatic experience of electroconvulsive therapy, which has left him socially withdrawn and slow in speech. His dream of building a shed in the backyard symbolizes his need for purpose and control over his fragmented life. Textual quote. Aston confides, they had these pincers," detailing the horrors of his treatment and the vulnerability it caused. The introduction of Mick. Mick, Ashton's younger brother, enters the scene. He is unpredictable and often hostile, creating a stark contrast with Ashton's quiet demeanor. Mick's dominance over both Aston and Davies establishes a new power dynamic. Textual quote. Mick mocks Davies, saying, "You remind me of my uncle's brother. He was always on the road," subtly asserting his control through confusion and intimidation. Davies' manipulation. Davies attempts to manipulate both brothers to secure his place in the house, exploiting their insecurities. He aligns himself with one brother while speaking ill of the other, showcasing his opportunistic nature. Textual quote. "You're the one who's got the sense. He don't know what he's doing," Davies tells Mick, trying to create a wedge between the brothers. The collapse of Davy's plans. As the play progresses, both Aston and Mick see through Davy's manipulative behavior. The brothers assert their control, exposing Davy's lack of loyalty and his inability to adapt to their expectations. Textual quote. Mick declares, "You're nothing but an old rogue," confronting Davies directly and highlighting his failure to gain a foothold. The final rejection. The play ends with Aston quietly but decisively asking Davies to leave. Despite his earlier generosity, Aston recognizes the futility of keeping Davies around. This marks a moment of personal growth for Aston as he asserts control over his space. Textual quote. Aston says, "I think you'd better find somewhere else," signaling the culmination of the brothers' realization that Davies cannot be trusted. Pinter's use of pauses, silences, and ambiguous dialogue creates an atmosphere of unease, making The Caretaker a masterful exploration of human relationships.